Thank you. It's now time. International Arts Festival Aichi 2025 Roundtable Part 2 will now begin. I would like to hand over to the moderator for Part 2, Ishikura-san. Ishikura-san, the floor is yours. Yes, my name is Ishikura. I work together with Cho-san, and I am working in the contemporary art field as a curatorial advisor for the festival. So for Part 2, we're talking about In Each Land, that's the theme. We have 3 artists who are joining this roundtable. We have a very global festival this time, including regions we have not used in the past, so we're going to be picking up on some of those themes. So I'd like to begin with my personal experience. Yesterday, I walked around the Seto city center sites, and 2 days before, I had a look here at the Arts Center as well as the Ceramics Museum. So I was walking around and I was thinking about 20 years ago. When I first traveled here in Aichi, I remembered my experience as a university student. Back then, I wasn't even studying arts. I was actually studying anthropology. I was traveling to India, Nepal, doing research in these various locations. Now, it just so happened that in Aichi Prefecture, there was the Aichi Kyuhaku and Expo event back in 2005. And right before that was held, I actually walked around Seto City. I looked at the old kilns in Seto City. I visited Nagoya for the first time. I looked around this very large city here. And it was only 5 years into the 21st century, and I was wondering about how humans will continue to live into the future. So I was thinking about the themes of the expo. The original concept for that expo was about not building pavilions or having a very radical concept for the expo. So they talked about nature conservation, ecology, or coexistence. These were the things that were being talked about. In the same year, I actually went to work in an arts university, and I started to look at arts anthropology. I began researching arts and anthropology and how they merge together. Arts in the 21st century, before this, it's been focused in Europe or in America. In other words, naturally, when you think about Europe expanding out overseas using their naval power, there was Europe meeting all these different cultures. Then there was the Industrial Revolution, and our lives changed in a huge way. So within Europe, they looked at European history, they looked at art, and that became spread around the world. I think in the 20th century, that was the basic understanding of what art was. Europe is one center, but as Europe is one center in the 20th century, around about mid-20th century, America became a second center. This was its massive political power, economic power that was located in the United States. So American art, Europe art became 2 big centers within the art world. When you talk about art around the globe, there was this common understanding that that was where art was. But in fact, from the end of the 20th century into the 21st century, our lives have changed vastly. Politics has changed radically. And when we talk about one Earth, one world of art, that's been re-examined, re-scrutinized to look at a more multi-dimensional art, that we have multiple art around the world. So back in 2005, when I began my research, it wasn't just Europe and the United States. There was art in many different regions which is being re-examined. And in various regions, as we were talking about earlier, research and fieldwork was being conducted. And this was where we had this re-meeting of art and anthropology. So in these times, in 2005, the expo was held. For Japanese history, it was a highly meaningful event. 20 years later now, here we are in Japan. There is an expo happening in Osaka. And in that same year, here in Aichi, we have this very diverse, multiple values existing side by side in an international arts festival. And for myself, being able to participate in this is something that gives me great joy. Right now, around the world, it is multidimensional, but on top of that, there is a backlash to that. There is division. And we have to come together again and unite. There's a lot of work going into that. But when we think about that, let's look at the dialogue between people, coexisting, living side by side, but looking at other regions with other languages, other cultures, meeting with them. We have to go back to those basics. So, artistic director Hoor has come up with A Time Between Ashes and Roses. Being in between is really important. So, in the second part of the roundtable, the title is In Each Land. I think this is very appropriate for our Aichi 2025. This festival is a place where you can see a lot of non-Western regions. Artists from those regions are here, and we have them on our panel today. I'd like to begin, first of all, to hear from Robert Andrew. Robert Andrew is from Australia, from the west side of the country, from Broome on the Indian Ocean. He is a descendant of the Yawuru people. So, right now, he's based in Brisbane on the east side of Australia. His work is located in Seto City in Kasenkozan, a mining location. It's possible to enjoy and view his work in that location. Our second artist joining us is Nagasawa Aoi. Nagasawa-san is based in northern Japan in Akita Prefecture. She actually lives in Yokote City. It's a very rice-cultivating region. She lives in these mountainous areas. That's where she grew up. She is actually now involved in the Matagi hunting culture. She's almost like an apprentice hunter, learning traditional hunting techniques from Akita. And she's looking at experiences that she's had from the forest as well as the animals that she hunts. Nagasawa-san is in Ani, in Akita Prefecture. Matagi is a male-only hunting group that has been the tradition for years, but as an exception, she has been accepted into that traditional hunting culture as a female. So a very different style or approach. She wanted to learn Matagi hunting, which is why she is changing that Matagi community within Akita by accepting a female. Also, by meeting Nagasawa-san, those male hunters in Matagi are now encountering art. They're learning about art, so they have a great deal of interest in her and her presence. Her work can be viewed at the Ceramics Museum. And thirdly, we are joined by Hrair Sarkissian. Hrair-san is from Damascus in Syria. Today, his works can be enjoyed at the 10th floor of here, the Aichi Art Center. From 2013 to 2017, across those 5 years, ISIS, Islamic State, occupied Syria. During that time, there was great destruction of many historical artifacts in Syria. So looking at those destroyed artifacts and archival items, he's using lithography almost, this half-transparent method, almost opaque, but by being backlit, you can see those items which are no longer in existence. You can see their images. It's a really powerful piece that has been presented for this festival. All three of them live in different places. Their styles are very different. Their language is different. But from these three artists, I want to hear about the differences and the commonalities, to look at how they are in dialogue with each of their lands. With that, I would like to first of all invite Robert-san. We have 10 minutes for each of you. Robert-san, the floor is yours.
Thank you. And it's a great privilege to be here and be part of this exhibition. It's a wonderful journey from the start, wandering up the in the heat at the clay factory, the Qasimi clay factory. And finding the two locations for these works, which it was just a perfect fit for the works that I'm doing. And this is the too far. This is the first work, or the work in the lower shed, and a lot of my work looks at sort of my Indigenous culture, country. Language and the relationship between language, culture, and time. And this work, and this is partly why this place suited it so well. I work with soil a lot, So we were able to use all the soil from around the area. There's only one colour that came from the quarry next door. So this is a soil tower. It's sort of compressed earth with a sort of an outer crust that almost resembles concrete when it's dried. So it starts off as a very rectilinear shape, a very geometrical block of almost concrete-looking things. And within this, there's layers and layers of string that's wound in there. And sort of the string slowly pulls out. It's really hard. I should have had a video for this because it would have made it a little bit easier to just explain. But over time, the string is pulled out from the centre, as you can see, and it is wound up onto the string, almost like a moving landscape on the wall as time goes on. So there's the string coming in down the bottom there from that tower, and as the tower lowers down and gets broken apart, disassembled in a way, and so part of my work is looking at this idea of the hidden and the denied of culture. It's sort of revealing what is held beneath, or as the title of the artwork is what lies beneath. Then the colours within the soil, the yellows and the browns, and there's a little bit of red from home, slowly move up the work. So that's the sort of the tower itself as that string's being pulled out. So I mean, all these materials we source from there. Was a lot of experimentation to see what would work in those conditions. But at the moment, it'll take 3 months, or the next 3 months, for that soil to actually go down to the bottom of that one. And it's sort of, it's always, a lot of the work is always looking at the ideas around country and how we see country, how we consume country. And in Australia, that consumption of all the 256 different groups of Indigenous people and language groups that existed within the country, and where there's sort of been whittled away, there's sort of there's regaining traction for the language and for parts of their country back, but a lot of that's been taken away. So it's part of what I talk about, is that idea of sort of scraping back histories and then showing Indigenous history behind that, not to obliterate the colonial history, but show what lies beneath, and it's a combination of. But it's almost that work is a contradiction between the outside and the inside, as the two cultures are in a way. So this work in the upper shed is sort of, I don't think I have a good image. This is part of the shed where they compress all the clay, and over time it's a very manual process that drips out and loses its water. So this overlooks all that and the dripping of that. And this is a similar sort of tower, but without the string, and it drips water on it. And over time it erodes back through the sides and reveals a language word, and it's a Yaru language word, which is buru, which you can just see appearing there. But yeah, over the colours within that soil and all the colours that we've used from around the site start to bleed down the front of it, and you get this wonderful combination of colours and sort of erosion and sort of almost a fractal type of thing of how we see river systems happens on the front of it. And the word buru is as I said, is a Yaru word, and it's a big word. It's a word I don't think I'll ever understand because it's a word from that particular country, from that language group, who this language has come from that country, and it means land, ground, everything you can see, and time and space. So it's a very, very powerful and big word used within Yaru culture. And I would have to live there, I think, for my entire life to actually get the true essence of that word. So I like to play with it in a sense to try to gain some more insight through my work about the language that I'm using through these processes that relate to the country that I'm eroding back through. And just for a quick glimpse, this is something like it'll look like in the end. So that was using different colours from a different area, ochres and oxides from Tasmania in Australia. But it sort of, that's got another word on the top, but hopefully it'll have a lot of the yellows coming through it, and some of the green colours will emerge as well. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Robert, thank you so much. So looking at the time in land, being able to see a word arising from the earth is a really interesting piece. So the Yaoru people actually have a strong tie with Japanese people, particularly in Wakayama Prefecture in Japan. They work in terms of collecting pearls. So pearl diving, there are many hundreds of people from that region that were in Japan doing that work. And from that exchange, there were bones which were brought from indigenous peoples, and there was scientific research being done on that. And in June of this year, from the Japanese government to the Australian government, those Yaoru people's bones of 10 persons was returned back to Australia. So I'd like to come back to that topic later. Thank you so much. Next, I'd like to move on to Nagasawa Aoi-san. You have 10 minutes. My name is Nagasawa Aoi. Thank you for having me today. Earlier, Ishikura sensei introduced me. When I was a student, I was actually a student under Ishikura sensei. I'm actually from his first class that he taught. So together, I've been doing work in Akita Prefecture, doing research and living as a student there. And it just so happens that where I visited was a region called Ani. Where I lived was called Yokote City. It's near places, for example, that are rice cultivating, but also there's fruit cultivation too. It's relatively a place that's plentiful. You don't have a lot of problems with food, so quite a plentiful region. But I visited this region called Ani, and it's very much on the borders. The limits. There are not many people, and the mountains are very vast, and inside of them there are these small places, valleys and rivers, small streams. There are these small communities which are formed around them. And there are these mountainous gods which are said to be found there. And they share the blessings of those mountain gods together within the community. And that is the basis of the Matagi people, who have a hunting culture. So after I've graduated, I've been in constant conversation with them to learn about hunting culture. As part of that, I used to just follow along behind these experienced hunters, but I didn't just want to follow them. I wanted to be able to see things with their eyes. Maybe there's something different you can feel if you become a hunter. So I got a hunting license for a firearm, and I've become an apprentice. I'm a member of the Matagi hunting culture now. So I'm one of the Ani Matagi people. I travel there. There's northern and southern regions in Akita Prefecture. I go back and forth between them. There's quite a distance between them. And what I felt from that is what I've been putting into my works. This picture is perhaps something that really speaks to a really interesting topic now, or a buzz topic now. In the summertime, when bears have nothing to eat, bears will come to take from what humans are cultivating. Bears are beginning to appear in places where they were never seen before in the past, around human communities. And we now have hunting of bears to be able to remove them from communities of humans. I'm involved in a very small way in this. We look around traps which are set. We also look at the bears which have been trapped, because Akita has this strong Matagi hunting culture. So in Yokote City, where I live, as part of that culture, which still remains, we trap bears. But even after we've trapped them, we don't treat them as being just nuisance animals, although, yes, that is what they might have become. But we think of them in our community as godlike creatures, godlike animals. When we think about the mountain vegetables and fungi that we collect, we think of the bear as one of that blessing from the gods. So that's how we butcher the animals. So here, this is almost a ritualistic butchering method that is done in my region. It's about standing around the fur, the skin of the animal, and you have the head, and it's reversed. As you can see, the skin versus the meat below, the body below, and we go around, we clarify and sanctify our own bodies before we receive the meat from this godlike animal. So it's about returning the spirit of the bear back into the mountains, and then after that it becomes an ingredient of food. So we always make that delineation in our ritual before we start to take the meat from the animal. Matagi culture, what I find really interesting about that is that there is what's called Matagi Kanjo. I can try and explain this by saying that the concept is really interesting. You look at a single bear or a bird or a rabbit. We receive these from the mountain gods. So this is hunting. It's not about I got this animal, I killed this animal. It's about we all managed to take this animal. Nobody takes the praise. It is a communal hunt, and it is meat, the head, the bones, the fur, as well as certain parts like the intestines, which become medicines. We try as much as possible to share it out evenly. The best pieces of meat don't go to a certain person. We split it out, like you can see in the picture, amongst the number of people who are involved. And whether it is the fur or certain things which cannot be shared out, we will convert that into money, and the money is spread out equally between everyone. So we make sure that nobody does better than others. Everybody gets the same. It's about sharing the blessing, sharing what is given to us. So as I learn about this, there is this almost spiritual culture where people live side by side with the mountains. I never used to have this, and I'm starting to see this. I'm starting to learn this from these hunter teachers that I have, as part of which, as I walk around the mountains with my Matagi teacher back in 2021, 4 years ago, something that I heard during that process is that people and bears living side by side together within the mountains, it's the case that the bears are also moving on to generations. Maybe the bears have gone through 3 generations during this time. Now, this picture in the middle, you have one large bear looking far into the distance. Now, this bear, for example, could be the original bear living, making the most of its physicality, walking around the mountains, gathering fruits and seeds, receiving the blessings of the mountain. If there was that wild bear back then there's a community amongst them. There's a hierarchy among them. And there are bears which wouldn't have managed to survive in that mountain, and they'd come down into the foothills. So coming down into the foothills, they would use humans, they would use other animals. For example, on the right-hand side here, you've got a female bear, for example, can't get into the male territory using the foothills and the human areas for their lives. And then once they give birth, then they teach to their cubs living in the foothills, not in the deep mountains. So they start to become used to how convenient it is to live near humans and mountains that are close to them. So apparently bears have had a learning experience, and their perspective has shifted. They start to look down below the mountains to where we, the humans, are living. The plains, they've started to look beyond the mountains. So as you can see, the cubs at the bottom, their eye line is looking down into the plains, the flatlands, close to where humans live. That's where they're focused. So starting with that pure wild bear, that deep, distant mountain, these cubs no longer think of that as being their home. For them, their home, their birth, where they grew up is becoming much closer to human beings. So I heard these tales, and that was where I painted this. So again, with the Matagi culture going on in the background, there are these bears living side by side. And maybe bears are being very careful to live so that they're not seen by humans. Because actually, in reality, there's not that many accidents, injuries, attacks by bears and humans. It feels as though bears do a lot of attacking if you look at the news. But actually, I wasn't sure why this was happening recently in the news. So I looked at the bear on the left. They have the shrine of the Matagi on top of its head. The Matagi mountain, there are bears who are living on the mountain where there is the shrine of the Matagi, and I wondered where their eye line would lead. What I learned here is about what I learned as I followed my hunter teacher. I was trying to put all of that into this painting. And here, looking at the people, the younger people who are in the hunting community, those who walk the mountains, and thinking about the distances with animals as those distances become smaller. We are having to hunt down animals because they are a menace, or there are furs, for example, that we get from that. When you look at the Matagi who used to make their living from hunting, what we do is different now. Now we have fur as no longer being of value. Often the fur gets thrown away now, unlike in the past. Well, I'm trying to find a way to leverage and use that fur. So for me personally, I'm a painter. I create paintings, and I want to be able to take these materials into my work where possible. So normally, I have to purchase nikawa. It's a binder, a glue, which is used in Japanese painting. And I was trying to find a way of obtaining that nikawa from somewhere else. Well, I work with animals, with bears. Well, then I want to depict bears with the bear material itself. So I heard about furs which were being thrown away, and I said, I'd like to take those. And you can create the nikawa glue binder from the furs, and I'm trying to use that glue binder in my paintings of bears. I often get asked, well, where are you using the nikawa? Well, this is a work in progress. You see the silhouette of the bear. You've got the mountains and his face, for example. Here I place a very thin paper here. I try to create texture from that, and this is where I use the materials from bears. I go into the mountains, and as a hunter, as I look around myself as a hunter, certain things do feel a little odd, a little disjointed to me. The Matagi hunting culture, I've learned from those who go beyond, who've gone ahead of me. And as they go into the mountains, as they go in more and more, you become more sensitive to the animals that are living there. And at certain points, at certain moments, you walk around the mountain, you feel there are no animals around you. There's no sense at all of their presence. In the picture, I talked about that third generation, the cubs of those bears. They have lost the knowledge of living in the deep mountains. They live in the lower mountains, the foothills that are closer to human civilization. That's part of the reason why you don't feel like any animals. And from last year, we're starting to see problem bears coming out of the mountains into human settlements. Because bears do have acorns or other fruit that they will go to in the mountains, but once every 10 years, there are great harvests of such plants. But the following year, the plants don't produce any fruit. So there is a plant cycle, and bears who have hit that time when there's absolutely nothing for them to eat, with those backgrounds, they come into humans' fields, humans' paddy fields. And it was recently reported, too, we've had these torrential rains in Japan, and the whole land is washed away. People and bears both struggle with this. It's not a disaster as such mutually, but it is this huge energy that is produced by the land, and we are drawn into it. We're sucked into that, and I feel that I myself, as a person who is directly affected by this, directly involved in it, I'm working hard to live within that. I saw myself as a presence in that. I wanted to keep this as much as possible, and I tried to then put that into this painting. This painting is that fresh reality, that moment, that instantaneous feeling that I had that I wanted to record. So this was very quick. I believe I moved my brush very quickly, but by the time I finished this, there was this flood, this river that had burst its banks, swimming this dangerous river. These bears which were coming into not just the fields, but into the cityscapes where my university was. There were bears which were coming into those areas. The reality overtook what I was painting. It was reported in the news that they were coming into those areas. So I created this work, but even my work couldn't keep up with the reality. That was a moment that kind of woke me up to the reality too. In a similar vein, what I'm continuing to do, what I'm trying to do, there's a limit to what I can do, of course, but I work hunting in the mountains. Sometimes I never see a bear, and I'll come back and there'll be a paddy field, and you can see very small in this picture, but there's a bear here, and here I am sending the bear back into the mountains. I want to meet that bear in the mountains. This is a place where I say goodbye to the mountain. It's a time of year when I should be meeting them in the mountains, but it's a moment where I saw the bear in the wrong place and I had to send them away. It's almost quite sad, but I don't want to meet the bears in the towns, in the cities. It's about having the right balance as a person who is directly involved in this, and to keep this as a record in paintings. I keep trying to find what I can do, and that's what I do as I create my art. Thank you.
Thank you, Nagasawa-san. Nagasawa-san's work before paintings, there is a little, in front of her painting, there is a little case showcasing the Nikawa binder, and also the research work that she did with her partners is what you can see. And finally, so I'd like to go to Hrair-san. 10 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. My name is Hrair Sarkissian, and so before I move to talk about the commissioned work here at the Aichi Triennale, I'd like to mention or describe very briefly my work, which is evolved mainly around human suffering, post-traumatic events, and also how people live alongside these sufferings that either their or the following generations have inherited. So this new project, Stolen Pasts, it was commissioned for the Aichi Triennale, and it's about a museum in the city of Raqqa, which is in northern Syria, on the right bank of the Euphrates River. It's a very ancient historical city that hosted many different civilizations throughout the time, and Babylonians were one of the first settlers in Raqqa. So when the Raqqa had a museum, and I think I put the wrong order here. Sorry. It had a museum. It's called Museum of Raqqa, and as you can see here in the photograph, this building, before becoming a museum, it used to be an Ottoman sarai, and then it was converted. During the French Mandate, it was converted into the residence of the consulate, of the French consulate. And then it turned into a police station. And in 1980, the Syrian government converted this building into a museum. So the museum hosted around 8,000 artifacts. These artifacts dated from 6,400 BC until the Islamic era, and the museum it was very basic and not very well documented these artifacts in the course of the years. So in 2000, when the war started, around 2011, there was a big panic about these artifacts, and so the locals in the city, with the help of the one curator from the museum, they came together and starting to pack all these artifacts to bring them to safety, to hide them in the central bank of the city, and also in another warehouse. It's called storage, which was called Harakula, and it's not working. So these are the objects, and these are the photographs were taken by the locals and the employees. So when the war started, at the beginning it was different military militias who entered the city and started to loot and smuggle few pieces from the collection of the museum. And later on, in 2013, Daesh, the ISIS, the Islamic State, entered the city, and it turned Raqqa the headquarters of the state. And what happened at that time is, in the mentality of the ISIS, of the Islamic State, museums are considered as a pagan, not very religious thing. It's more pagan, and they had to destroy them. So from in the course of these 4 years, they also started to smuggle most of the pieces that belong to this collection. And so from out of 8,000 pieces, there's only 860 pieces left in total. And mainly the big pieces were stayed in place, and the rest were smuggled, and they were all abroad. They went into different parts of the world. And still, until today, nobody knows where they are. Apparently, they say 60% of this collection is in London, in the black market. So I come across this issue in 2018, but I met one of the Dutch archaeologists who was involved in these sites, and his name is Olivier Nieuwhoutse, who was very involved, and he initiated the storage Harakula in Raqqa. And I like to note that these archaeological pieces that we see here in front of us, they don't have a very big financial value, but they have an immense value for humanity researchers and its history. So I met Olivier, but sadly I didn't continue the project because Olivier passed away very early. And when I was invited to take part in the Triennale, I contacted Olivier's colleagues who were Syrian archaeologists, and together they initiated something that's called Focus Raqqa, which is basically they try to relocate these objects or kind of to create a database and provide it to the Interpol so they can trace whenever any of these pieces reappear. So I had an access to these files that were photographed by the locals, and I decided to make something that is called lithophane. It's a method was created by Chinese and used. It was very popular among Buddhists because they used to write encrypted text messages on ceramics, and they had to put it in through the light so they can read what's written on the ceramic plate. And then the French took over this technology, and it became something very decorative, where they started making lampshades out of these lampshades made of ceramic, engraving images on them, and then use them as lampshades. And the moment you turn on the lights, the image appears. And there's a playful with the thickness of the ceramic. So the thicker it is, the darker it becomes. And so lithophane in Greek, it means, it consists two words. Litho, it means stone, and phane, it means to bring it up to the surface. And for me, this was very important to bring back all these objects back to the surface, because they are basically gone, and I don't think we will ever be retrieving these pieces again, because one of the reasons when they packed all these objects, they didn't have the time to describe all these objects and what did they have, like a historical timeline for this object. It was not included in this process. So what the collectors do also is like they sit on this collection. They don't put it on the market until 15 or 10 or 15 years later, because everybody would forget about it, and then they can launch again in the market to sell it or to deal with it. So as you can see here, I made it these pieces. They are 30 by 30, but they are not made of ceramic. I used a 3D printer where we used plastic, PLA, which is made of corn, and it's very degradable. And I printed 90 pieces out of all the images that I have access to. So it's the installation. If you go down and see, it's my initial idea is to create a sort of cemetery for all these lost objects that are gone, which is very sad, not only for Syrians, also for the entire humanity, because it's a very important part of our history that is completely disappeared now. Thank you.
Hrair-san, thank you very much. As you mentioned there in your presentation, arts are not just about joy, it's about sadness, anger. There's a variety of emotions that can be spoken of. It's a very scientific way of doing it, or you can do it in a very subjective way. So thank you so much. It's a wonderful piece that you've made. So our next part is discussion. From myself, I have just one simple question that I would like to put to everyone. And I'd love to get your comments on that. And same as part one, I'm going to ask Artistic Director Hoor to give some comments too. So my question for each of you as artists living in each of your own lands, how do you face up to the past of those lands, your roots, history, memory? And how do you then extract from that and take it into the future as art? I'd like to go to Robert first. So, Robert, from West to East Australia, you have moved across very large areas. So, talking about the past and future, what do you think?
Thank you. I suppose I could start off with mentioning for a long time I knew there was difference within our family, and you never ever saw it as a child. But I think it was at 13 that I was told that I had Aboriginal heritage, which, looking back on it, was very obvious within relatives in our family. So I went through, I suppose, a Western education system, and that process gave me a history, I suppose, a Western colonisers' history of Australia, and the Indigenous people were seen as, I said, going to be extinct soon and living out in the desert. So that was my foundation. I suppose there's a lot of racism around that time as well that I was never affected by because I had a lighter skin colour. But I think as I progressed, I wanted to know more and more about the family. And so through family and through going back to university and studying, I found out a lot about Indigenous history that even now a lot of it you still can't, it's not easily accessible or known. So this sort of learning, I suppose there's a lot of atrocities that happened within Australia to Indigenous people. That sort of pulled a lot of foundational, I suppose, beliefs from underneath me, which was sort of, at that time, it was hard to sort of comprehend and I suppose deal with. And so through that, my art making was a way to, I suppose, show bring those histories forward for me, and sort of trying to assemble and disassemble, I suppose, colonised Indigenous history, and place it, I suppose, for myself and others in a way that it was more comprehensible. So that's a really important part of my practice is that, but also learning more about Yaru language, and which is one of 256 languages that I mentioned before. It's within that language. There's so many words that have a great connection with the country, but also the knowledge that's held in with each one of these languages that are dying. So it's or dead, but and some of them are still very, very active. But once you've cut it off for a certain period of time, it's really hard to regain that knowledge held within the country. So not trying to. I would never be able to replicate or to deliver that language to anyone, but it's, I think, trying to sort of put forward the importance, one of country, language and people, and the diverse cultures there, because it's not one Aboriginal culture, it's many, many Aboriginal cultures that have so much knowledge about their own country, sort of tens of thousands, 40 or more thousand years of knowledge within that country. So that's for me has been an important, I suppose, aspect to my art making. And the more I suppose the more I learn, the more about Indigenous history, and the more I go deeper into our family background. I suppose the more I reflect that within my artwork and try to. It's in a way the artwork's it's a little bit about telling a story. I suppose in a more contemporary way, sort of Indigenous story in a more contemporary way, so that in fact that I use, I suppose, mechanical devices, and I use long time within my works to slowly disintegrate, to talk about that long time of Indigenous history, and sort of the works. There's a lot of layers or stratifications that again talk about that long history, and that history that, as growing up in a Western country for 200 years, that sort of history is not really perceivable to us, and the knowledge that we bring forward in our cities, they're 250 years old. You don't see any depth of those cities of what lay beneath that. We get to see the buildings of 250 or 200 years old that are heritage listed, meaning they hold great value to that, which, there's some lovely architecture there, but there's very little insight into the value that's held, and it's a lot of the artefacts are ephemeral, so they're not there anymore, but the knowledge that's held within or below that. That's, I suppose, I don't know whether that answers the question. I was going to weave a little bit around that. Thank you.
Thank you for the wonderful response. For Robert's work, it is at the Kasen Kozan, the mine, and it's that's where the soil's from. And then there is a Seto Canyon, a big place like a Grand Canyon of Seto, and there is the connection with the land and the people, and the history is connection. So can we ask Hoor-san some comments?
I think you answered everything I wanted to ask, but I'll try again. You work a lot. You look at a lot of language, earth, land, really deep historical connections to the land, but you connect them to new technologies. Can you talk about how you grapple these two sides of the past and the future? Because your work is very intricate and sophisticated in its technology. It's not as simple as someone would see it. It takes a lot of time. So how did you decide to kind of integrate these two ways of working together? And how did you find the process from trying to do something that is connected to earth and land and bring it to another place because you've previously also had an exhibition at the Yokohama Triennale during COVID. So just this experience of trying to transfer a bit of home and land into another place as well. Sorry.
Thanks, Hoor. I suppose part of the technology, I've always been interested in technology, so it's always held a place for me from probably the age of 5 or something like that. And it's more, I think there was a lot of experimentation. It wasn't just using it as what it should be. It was always playing around and disconnecting, taking things apart, plugging things in, blowing things up, setting the house on fire, sort of things. And then from that, I was able to put things back together. But it was always that idea of being able to, it's almost corrupt that technology within my practice. So you've got printing or plotters that were meant to deliver our histories, or surfaces that were blackboards underneath that I'm slowly erasing back through. So it's sort of, whether it's a simple or a difficult, simple technology, which I use a lot of sort of very mechanical devices within it, as well as sort of other sophisticated, or more sophisticated technology and programming and things to make these things run. But it's always been, I suppose it's this balance between probably my Indigenous, non-Indigenous heritage that comes into that play of this sort of supposedly high-tech and this supposedly low-tech, and then creating something out of that becomes a new entity that's not one nor the other, but something else. Has always been, I suppose, not an aim, but it's always something that comes out with those works. So it's Yokohama was, I suppose, a little bit of a hard one in COVID time, because there's these processes, and they, as you say, they look simple, but it's the building of them, the actual installation of them takes a long while. The Yokohama one was probably 20 layers of ochres and oxides on the wall, and then white chalk, layers and layers of white chalk on there. So it basically looks like a white wall, and then using water to erode back through that, I suppose, that white wall, and bring that text out. And it's sort of the programming and everything, but it's techniques that I sort of developed in the studio by accident. We were mentioning serendipity and accidents before. There's a lot of that happens within that with technology. You throw technology and raw material, the sort of rocks and soil and water together, and you're always getting some happy accident, and that's what I like. And this is this interface between both of them. You never really know what's going to happen you've got an understanding where it's going to go, but you can't say, oh, this bit's going to pull out, or this bit's going to dribble down like that. It does its own thing in the end, and I like that interplay of when they both meet and create something that I step back from my curate and sort of choreograph the event, and then let the players sort of do their own thing in a way. Yeah.
Thank you. And for Robert's work, The Bull's Word, the words was about everything from the land to the skies, the time, everything around. So I think that's a very important word to understand about the land. And also talked about the remaining bones, what Japan has. We've in exchange there were the remains that Japan has, and it has to be returned. And then there will be other issues related, and that is all in the background of the artworks, or the uranium mine for the relationship between Australia about the nuclear power generation. I think all that time is also reflected into the works. And I'd like to go to Nagasawa-san next for about the past and the future connection for your works. Can I hear your thoughts?
Yes, I'm still very much learning, but when I think about my field, my daily life is one where mountains are close to me. And from the time that I was very small, I would go fishing. I would go into the mountains for pleasure. And what I was most afraid of was the existence of bears. So they felt like a very mysterious neighbor to me. But working with the Matagi, working with people who hunt, that people move like bears, that bears learn human words. There's this mutual learning between the two species is something that I have been able to experience, and looking about how they look at the world as they head into the mountains. As I think of that, I look at the past, the present, and the future. My perceptions seem to show those as being very equal. I seem to accept them. I try to use that information while I consider how do I face up to the other party, the other. How do I think about my thoughts, my presence? How do I successfully communicate that to others? How do we mutually create an area where you can live comfortably together, protecting our own while living side by side? I guess it's that sense of perhaps a little bit of rivalry too, but I've never been exposed to this up to now, so I have to interpret this from the words of the hunters around me, their behavior, the way they position themselves, their posture, if it's a skill that they have or this ability to take on those thoughts and perceptions. I try to just kind of practice and pretend and step into that. I try to bring that into my own heart. I try to take it on board to see what my behavior would be like. I think up to now I've been very much an individual, just me versus the world, the mountains, and now I look deeper, more broadly to see how we are so strongly tied to one another. I try to understand that and talk about that. I want to successfully live and have a relationship with those around me, and I think about the capacity that's needed to do that, and maybe within us as humans, maybe it was just something that flowed through us, but maybe it's an ability that I've forgotten. Maybe I haven't successfully used that ability that I had. Perhaps there is something that was inherently inside of me that I had, and I feel that quite often, and I try in my own way to put that into practice. I attempt to do that. But for some reason, I feel like what I've chosen now seems to fit very well with me. When there's a moment where I feel that my behavior fits really well, I realize that sometimes I'm overthinking things. My body just does something beyond my own consciousness, beyond my own intent. There's almost this zone that is beyond that. And I feel life draws me into that. It is definitely a blessing that I'm given. There are these moments where I feel, I don't know if it's the past or the future or the now, but all these things mixed together. There is a moment where I am able to look at all of that, these miraculous moments. There are often these times that I feel that. And up until then, when I think about the Matagi hunting world, women hadn't been allowed into that. And I don't actually know for certain that women were never a part of that history. Perhaps as the mountain transforms, maybe there are footsteps that are no longer seen, that are dormant somewhere in history. Maybe there are things that are forgotten now, but the birds, the animals, the trees may remember that which has been lost to us. Well, in that context, how should I behave? What should I do? What can I do? Because I am me now in this moment. I'm constantly trying to think of that as I live. Sorry, I don't know if that answers it. Thank you. So actually 2 years ago, when Hoor-san came to Akita, and Hoor-san has actually traveled widely around Japan to meet people, and she went to meet with Nagasawa-san to look at the hunters, and there was some duck soba, I think, that you enjoyed, had been hunted. Did you remember and enjoy that meal?
Yes, thank you. It's true. It was really interesting, and I'm very grateful for that visit, because I felt like I was invited to a place that not a lot of people will be able to visit. you've also don't just paint bears. You've painted beautiful paintings of fish, really large-scale fish, and on different materials. And then you mentioned about community making soba together and hunting duck as well together. I was wondering if you could tell us more about all these experiences of being part of this community and what you've learned from it and what you hope that maybe people who live in the cities might be able to gain or understand.
Well, I don't know if I'm really aware of what I'm doing, but for example, if I go to the hunters group, being admitted as a member, a formal member there, they said that it's been 3 decades since a new member joined that group. So during this current Heisei era, there was the former Heisei era, no one joined newly, and it's the first time that a woman joined. So this old men were a little bit puzzled and awkward and how to handle and talk to me. So I think it was a little uncomfortable for them as well because they never had a new member join in more than 3 decades. But this Akita Art University as well. But I think it was these. I think we were able to make that new challenge on both sides, myself and them, and even at the art universities. And so I'll be in the university, I would be learning, but also we learn how to learn. And I think I will be thinking about how I can teach people. So there's this mutual learning process as we are in the community, not really doing something new, but it's like updating things that has been followed, that has been passed down. And that was a very interesting experience for me. Another thing is that I don't know if I was able to actually have this experience, but when we go hunting for ducks, if there is a hunting place that I learn from others, I try to go myself afterwards, but that will really test my skill as a hunter. If I don't have enough skills, it means that I haven't understood the fields enough. And then my masters will have seemed that they did it very easily, but if I don't have the necessary skill sets, then I won't be able to do what they taught me. So things that I learned as a beginner, I think for my seniors and my masters, they have been practicing and experiencing for years, and there are these skills that they have acquired, but they try to stand in my same position, in the same perspective as me, and try to teach me from a beginner's perspective. And though there are these Matagi hunters still alive today, what's interesting about them is that they love new skills, they love new technologies. And something that they are misunderstood about is that in the Matagi Hunter fiction world, they are like the solo people living that likes to be alone and lonely, and there are the people fighting in the nature environment in a classical way, a traditional way. But actually, there is this Matagi mentality, and meaning that they are people who like to engage with others in the community and work together. There has this kind of strong community type of mindset. That is a kind of organization that this Matagi Hunter group creates. So they have the tradition. They protect the tradition, but also they're seeking for new material, new culture, very hungry for new things as well. So where there were times that they were wearing the skin of the bears and going into the mountain, but now they use the most latest type of material that will keep them warm, and they also use GPS. And in the past, even the language, they were using their Matagi unique language that they believe that they can speak with the bears, but now they use the wireless radios to speak among themselves. They really are keen to utilize and leverage new technology, and they think that their world is also resonating with the natural environment. So they, even if they try to win over the bears that they're hunting, sometimes they will be won over. So they always think about how to win against against the bear. So they enjoy this kind of this win or lose type of way of living, and that's very attractive for me as well. And it's not only because it is in this location, in this matagi hunting community, but in various communities, I think similar things are being seen in many locations around Japan. So in which timing, there might be a moment that you are very strongly attracted to, and you don't really force yourself to join, but I think there's a timing that you are kind of naturally pulled in, and if you can go by that natural pull, then I believe that you'll be able to have good communication with that community. That's what I felt. So it doesn't mean that just because I grew up in the mountains, I was able to join this Matage community, but probably these kinds of things, chemistry happens in the city as well. Thank you very much. So Nagasawa-san, when I met her, she was a girl that loved fishing, and she loved that manga comics that was about fishing, and she's been changing. So I've been looking forward I'm now looking forward to how she will change in the future. Well, it is now we have past our time, but we want to go to Hrair-san. And so Hrair-san, your work connects the past, present, and future. So what are your thoughts about this connection, please?
As an artist, I live more in the past rather than thinking about the future, because I also come, besides being Syrian, I am also Armenian. I have Armenian origins, and I'm third generations of Armenian genocide survivors that happened in 1915 by the Ottomans towards the Armenians. And this is something, it's been, as an Armenian community in diaspora all over the world, it's something we forcibly inherit since the day when we're born. And it has a lot to do to maintain our identity in all these different places that we are scattered around the world. And it's also because of the denial of the Turkish authorities that as perpetrators that these things never happened, took place in our history. So for me as an artist and in my practice, this event that took place more than 100 years ago, it's very present in most of the works that I do, even if it's not directly related, but it's very linked. And that makes me a lot to think mainly about the present, because now we see what's going around the world, what is happening. So it doesn't give me any space to think about the future. It's sort of future doesn't exist for me. Because at the moment somehow I just want everything to end now and start from new. It's everywhere, wherever I look, when I look at news or whatever is happening around us, it completely, it shuts me down. It doesn't make me think about doing more works. On the contrary, it puts me, I become more like paralyzed to think about something new, to do it. So in that sense, that's how my daily life, let's say, I came into reality that somehow I have two personalities in life. One is very anecdotal person. I wouldn't say joyful, but I like to make anecdotes in life and joke with people and friends. But when I go to work, I'm completely someone else, someone completely different, and very traumatized from just going around and witnessing the traces of the history this like traumatic history that took place in all these places that I go. So that's one of the things that I'd like to share with you, and I want to say also that I am based in London. It's been 15 years. I left Syria in 2008, and I never thought about doing work that is related to the UK, or before that I was in the Netherlands. It's never came across my mind to do something that is related to that. So that's kind of my mind and soul, and it's still back there where all these things happened. So yeah. That's
Thank you so much. Hoor-san, did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for explaining also about the Armenian genocide. I think it's important that a lot of people know about that history. You have another story I would like you to share, maybe more about your history as a photographer and how you came about, and about photography and studio photography. I think the audience would like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I came into photography because my father was a photographer. So my father, at a very young age, he started as a car technician when he was, I think, 12, 13. But when he used to come home for lunch break, my grandmother always used to put him at the corner of the house because he was always very filthy with grease and stuff. So he got really complex from that, and he decided he wanted to look for something more hygienic, and he started working as a photographer. Historically, Armenians have a big trace influence when it comes to photography in the region, in Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, and Jordan, Iraq, because during the Ottoman period, Armenians, when they were settled in the historical Armenia, there were a lot of missionaries who used to come and teach people, Armenians, to how to become craftsmen, and also one of the professions was photography. From that, I mean, when the genocide happened, Armenians were scattered, and one of the main professions that they started to practice was photography. And so first photography school, for instance, was in Palestine. It was by an Archbishop, Krikor Giragosyan. He was a religious person. But then he gave up religion and he became a full-time photography tutor in Palestine, in Jerusalem. My father became a photographer for 30 years. He used to photograph weddings, social events, these kind of things, and he opened the first color lab in Syria in 1976. So this lab is basically where I grew up and where I learned everything about photography, life, and history. And I spent more time in the lab than in our house. I worked there and I took over the lab for quite a long time, and until I reached to a level where there was nothing more that I can do. And I always wanted to become a photographer, so I decided to leave the lab and become an artist. So that's where my journey started around 2005. 2005, sorry.
Thank you. Listening to the three artists, Robert-san, Nagasawa-san, Hrair-san, I think the audience will be able to enjoy your artworks more deeply. We are overly past our schedule, but maybe we can accept one question from the floor. Anyone? Well, thank you very much. I enjoyed very much the session today and the discussions. I want to ask Nagasawa-san about the matagi hunting that you're involved in, and that's the theme for your artwork. Recently, I guess this year, we're seeing a lot of the battle between the territory of bears and human. There's many people who's been attacked by bears this year, so there's kind of this atmosphere in Japan that all the bears should be hunted down. And even in the residential area now, the firearms are approved of being used if it is against a bear. And we're not really, people are saying that we're too naive if we try to return the bears back to the mountains. We're at an emergency state. Don't have that kind of we're kind of, and so do you have anything that you'd like to say against this kind of atmosphere now in Japan regarding bears and the people's human residential territory? Well, if you look at the news programs and the public opinions that are introduced on those kinds of programs, like we should eradicate these bears. Well, we don't hear that where I am staying in, and maybe it's in my neighborhood, but at the actual site, we want to protect the area that people reside in, but also the area that bears are living in. And we can't select either or. It's not an either or issue. We are always hoping that things will go out well in a good balance. That will be our hope. But if bears are thought to think of something that is threatening to the people's residence, then there are some people thinking that we have to take action. In my region, there will be the grape farms that they have grown, and then the grapes. It's not only bears, but then bears and also the birds also. Crows also eat the grapes, and that's a huge damage to this farm. But if the bears and the crows, if they don't find grapes there, then they'll go look for other places. So it's not that the bears and other animals are willingly coming close to the human residential area. They were used to be, they knew that they were afraid of humans before in the past, but now there are people with rifles, the hunters with rifles going into the mountains. There's much less than the past. The population of hunters has gone down from a historical perspective. So probably bears also do not know about people, and they don't know that people are things to be afraid of. So that's a different world for bears too. And I think that is also creating this issue of bears in the residential areas. So, but we have to, I think, take action on protecting the both sides, taking a balance. So in the hunting culture, our way of looking at bears is that is something that we receive as a blessing, and we just take what we can only consume. And also, we have to do over than that, then that makes us feel very sad. But that is what is happening now. That is the kind of emotions that is happening in my group, hunters group. And for the artwork that I have created about the animals and bears, there is always a subject that I have taken, and I have experience in coming to know about each of the bears that I draw in my artwork. And if there is a bear that we take down, we never throw away. And Matagi culture, we say that for all bears there is that we hunt down, there is nothing that we should waste and we can waste. And so that is the kind of mindset that we have. We should, if we receive the blessing, then everyone should share and get their own part and enjoy. So I don't have a very strong message here or a way of thinking on this case, but I think no one is still convinced about this issue. No one has a clear answer about what we should do. I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered your question. Well, thank you very much. Well, including what was just said, the relationship between people and nature, also between the relationship between countries, there are various difficult issues surrounding us. So, and this art festival, this Triennale, is in a sense a very celebrative moment. But I think it is also an opportunity for us to share the creativity of the artists and also to celebrate the arts. But in front of us, there will be various issues between people, like the destroying the environment and also genocide, wars, and also discrimination. And we should be aware of this, but to deepen our thoughts through the art. And that is what Hoor-san here as artistic director has put out as a theme for this Triennale. And I hope people who have joined here, I hope you will take time to think on how we should be protecting ourselves, what is going to be important for us to protect. And that is what we want you to think through the artworks. There will be performing arts and learning programs. And it might be different formats that we will provide, but that is all to provide you an opportunity to think about these issues. We've just started our Triennale this year, but I hope that it will be an opportunity for you to face the issues right in front of us and to think thoroughly on what your own experience is. And I hope you will enjoy that from that perspective as well. And I do encourage you to visit all of the venues. I'm sorry that I went past the scheduled time, but thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. With this, we would like to close out the International Arts Festival Aichi 2025 Roundtable event. Finally, just a point of order to everyone. Your interpretation receivers, make sure you return those as you exit the venue. Thank you very much.